head of fire safety for Catalyst.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Got it. Enjoy your group. Your group looks good. Does it?
What? Peach is doing my Sweden.
Hi.
Did you send me that thing on email?
There we go,
I
mate.
suppose.
Hello,
Yeah.
Hello, Sharon.
Hi, so
I
I'm
just
double
can't really save
checking
it
my
down to my phone. I
microphone's
don't know what's going on.
Just can you make sure that in each of the group they've got the text to work on?
Yeah, I will send the text.
I have to say I'm not sure where the text is. Can you put the text for group 1 in the in it? Yes.
I'm not probably doing that's
a bit annoying.
yeah. Well, it's annoying really because it goes off on you.
That and then your computer, then your phone, then
Yeah.
it's
Oh, God, no. Right, and then starts in a few weeks and all.
I've got to do my APM this year. He said we do an ILM and an APM. I said I'll do my APM. I'll do my ILM after.
6 months. Just what I need.
I've got to sit through Prince too.
Prince.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got it now. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Great. Okay, thank you. So the purpose of this is we've got the main document. Is everybody aware of the main document? Let me open up the main document. This is the main document that we're modifying. So we're in this one here, which is the type 1 compliance inspections. And then what we're doing here is we're looking at, this is the text. We want to find replacement images for these that are more residential specific. And then but what we need to do is just check this to make sure that there's nothing in here that is too that isn't relevant for housing. So that's the purpose of this. So can we just go through? Has anybody looked at this ahead of the game at all?
George, I've had a quick look at it. The only thing I would put out there as a generic statement would be that the first paragraph states that the standard should be satisfactory, as both the manufacturer and installer will systematically have a percentage of their doors subjected to regular audits. And my concern is that there's a perception that that is probably a greater percentage than it actually is. So it's not about the document. It's just, I think there's a comfort when you read something like that there's quite a high proportion of inspections been carried out. And I think that the perception versus the reality varies quite widely. So and I think it's more to do with the system as opposed to the text. But I just think that makes it sound as if, you know, you don't have to worry about it because everything's been inspected. and I'm really concerned about the language.
So what? How do you think we might modify that, Sharon? Maybe be because there will be, depending on the risk, that will determine how frequently it's done, won't it?
Well, I don't know whether or not, if the system's broken, you're trying to write a document about a system that's broken, but highlight to people that the comfort that's given is by the audit purpose or the audit regime. So I think it might be something like whether you sort of caveat it with it should be investigated, you know, or the responsible person should be made aware of the audits that have been carried out, you know, just try and get it to drive down to a bit more detail, so that in an, you know, if you've got an HMO or if you've got a housing association with thousands of doors, if someone's gone out and checked 1 or 2 doors on a large property, it's probably not a fair percentage. And there's an assumption that that will be across the board, that it's the same joiner or the same certified door installer that's actually carried out the work. But I just think post Grenfell and the fact that the system's not fit for purpose, I'm a bit concerned that there's too much of a comfort in that statement, that once you read this, everybody's going to have their doors checked, everything's going to be audited, so job done.
Okay. So what I've written there, is that helpful?
I think something along the lines of an approach, you know, maybe confirmation of an appropriate level of audits have been carried out relative to the risk and size of the property, or something along, you know, just draw it out a bit more.
Yeah.
Until the system's fit for purpose.
Is that part of the management strategy?
Well, no, this is talking about compliance of new fire doors. So they're talking about the manufacture and installation. So yes, this is the build element of it that I'm looking at. But I know that there's people who have third-party certified installers and have third-party certified schemes. But when we've gone to site, they're not been installed properly. I know that we're a third-party certified installer for passive fire protection, and we have about 4 visits a year. If you think of the number of fire stops that we can do per annum, and have the, okay, Big Brother is watching you and can pop into any job, but we can probably tell the auditor what job they go to and who they see. So it's not really as transparent as the system is made out to be. It can be abused. So I think if you're handing over a building with new fire doors installed, I think it's better to make the person who's responsible for the property aware that it might be a new building that's been handed over, but can they have confirmation of the percentage of the doors that have been carried out? And it's got to be relative.
That have been, Does anybody else have a view on what Sharon's just said, please? Hello?
No, everybody's left us.
Apologies there. I didn't hear what you asked, George.
Sorry, Danny?
I didn't quite hear what you asked. Sorry about that. Could you say it again?
Yeah, sorry. Do you have a view on what Sharon has just been saying there in terms of the new doors? I'm amazed. I don't understand why we don't have more people in this. I wonder if anybody's still, but bear with me a second. I'm just going to pop back into the main meeting if it's still going. I'm just, or just, could you go back into the main meeting? Oh, just isn't there now. He's popped out.
Danny, I think George was just asking that, obviously I've made a comment about perception versus reality and the sort of comfort of the guidance document, and it's really just to see, does anybody have any comments? Because obviously that's just my opinion on that.
No, to echo that, I think you're bang on. And looking at, let's just say, sort of third-party accreditors and stuff like that that may come and audit the installers. You know, I think to have something more robust in place where the responsible person takes control, you know, would prove better in the long term.
I think, well, I think George has disappeared now, but I think the point, I think he was just double checking that I wasn't saying something that no one else agreed with, so we'll probably need to have the conversation when he comes back. I think there's meant to be about half a dozen of us.
Yeah, well, I've got Jamie with me here. We've had some technical issues, so we're both on the same computer. So we are both here. But yeah, I think there was supposed to be a couple more people in our group.
I'll be able to click a link in case they get disconnected or something.
Yeah.
I take it the calls also, I mean, I noticed that when they're doing this, everything refers to the Red Book or VRE. I'm assuming that they're going to change it to sort of more generic statements throughout. I wasn't sure if that's your take on it.
Yeah, to be honest, I've only, like, are you referring to the whole document or just the section that we're reviewing?
No, we've just been saying, to be honest, I read the first 2 pages, I think, were the only 2, because after that it was just about door thickness. I thought there's not really much point because the rest of it's
Yeah.
and then the bit at the end. I just feel as if everybody's trying to reinvent the wheel so they get a badge on it just now. I'm getting a bit worn.
Yeah, you might be right. I understand exactly what you mean.
So it's really just, to be honest, the first 2 pages of the Word document. In fact, the first page and the first paragraph of the second page. All I've written is paragraph 1. There's a percentage difference, you know, a huge percentage difference between the perception and the reality. Invasive checks in paragraph 3, I've sort of flagged that as possibly destructive tests, because I know they're saying invasive between the frame and the wall, but I think if you do go in and the facings are on, I think you should be permitted to take them off.
Yeah.
Unless they've got photographic evidence at that location, but I still think it wouldn't be. I think it would be good to frighten more people, and I don't think we're frightening enough people. And then the 4th paragraph, I've just put a big, you know, red procurement at the front of it, because I think all of this falls down at the beginning if the necessary procurement sort of criteria is not set out. But after that, I don't think the document's anything worth commenting on.
Yeah, I think that that paragraph 1.3, you know, I don't know any particularly you know, the housing association or local authority that would potentially procure anybody that wasn't third party accredited anyway.
See, I disagree. There's everybody. I think I'm a passive fire installer, so I mean, if I can ask you what side of the fence you're on.
So we carry out fire risk assessments, and then we have an operational side of the business that does fire door installations and maintenance through to you know, fire stopping. So
right, what are you based in down south though? Yeah.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the problem that we'll both experience is there's a huge amount of work being carried out across the fire sector, if you like. There's not enough people that are qualified to do that work. So the issue that we've got and I can only comment on Scotland. There are joiners who are doing doors. They're not third party certified. I've been working with an academy in Glasgow as part of their executive committee to try and get people who have joiners working for them through some accreditation. It's got nothing to do with me because that's not the line of work that we do. But I just appreciate the fact that there's so many people needing to get doors done, and it's a case of anybody's offering to do it just now. So I think it's probably a bit more Wild West up here than it is maybe down south, but I think there is a huge problem with it up here.
Yeah, I mean, well, I only know of one place or organisation that would be using in-house joiners and things like that to install doors. But then those joiners have the required training and expertise to do it. So, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely something we've seen a culture shift, particularly within RSL, so social landlords and stuff like that, where they are becoming more aware of the risk if they do not go to somebody that is or has the required competencies and the accreditations to back it up.
I think
seeing a shift on that here.
Yeah, Danny, I think the point is here, the document is there to, you've got a catch-all there. We're not saying that they shouldn't be. I think the document's not saying that they shouldn't be, but that they, sorry, clearly that's a policy of the organisation, isn't it?
Sorry, George, I think you might have missed my statement before Danny's. What I had asked Danny, the first conversation we'd had was about the document, but because you weren't here, we just carried on talking. But the conversation about that statement was Danny had asked, or we talked about third-party certified installers, and I'd said the problem that we have is we believe there is an issue in Scotland because there are people who are not third-party certified carrying out this work. Whereas I think Danny's alluding to the fact that there's more people down actually installed, like they are sticking to that recommendation. But we're obviously having the conversation that there's far too much work across the fire sector and there's not enough people qualified to do the work that has to be carried out. But if you're on a project and you need fire stopping, you need fire doors, you need, insert any trade, you will take somebody with either the price or the people or the labour available. You're not, it's not got to the stage where the project is on hold because I do not have somebody third party certified to install this door. The project still goes on and they will take somebody. So I don't think the housing associations, I think they might like it in many instances, but I don't think they're necessarily stopping projects and making sure that is actually part of the procurement stop-go system.
Yes, apologies for popping out, by the way. It's just that several door manufacturers and installers that I know were supposed to be in this group haven't come over. So that's why I was trying to track them down, and they're happily working in the other groups. So I've left them to it. So I apologise for that. So from that point of view, I think the key thing here is so are we saying, Sharon, that whilst I was away, you broadly, are we happy with the copy that's in here, or do we need to modify it?
Well, my comments were the first page of the Word document and the first paragraph of the second page was as far as I read, because after that it's about doors and like standard text.
Of course.
And I'm not, unfortunately,
you're
I don't
not
have
a
the time to go
specialist
through
in that area.
No, but I'm also not going to spend the time going through that, which I think is a standard. Anybody should be able to read that part of it. But Danny and I were talking about the fact that if the system's not fit for purpose, paragraph 1, we've talked about the perception versus the reality. My concern is, off the back of Grenfell, everybody's trying to be an expert in the field, and if you turn around and say to somebody, even in terms of fire stopping, all the fire stopping is audited and therefore there's a comfort by this audit process that your installation is 100% guaranteed to be correct across the board because you have employed a third-party certified contractor. And know for a fact that I'm not comfortable making that statement because that's not true. There
Absolutely.
are third-party certified contractors that their work has been ripped out by others. We're also saying that the amount of work that needs to be carried out just now and is being pushed quite rightly post Grenfell with fire safety and the safety of building occupiers being first and foremost, there's far too much work that's needing to be carried out and not enough competent people to do it across the fire sector. So the concern is these documents, as soon as they come out, and at the moment I think everybody's trying to reinvent the wheel so they get a document with their badge on it. I think that the documents themselves are going to fall into the same trap as before. Once I've read this and I understand it and I've complied with it, I think I'm all right. And I don't think so. Without drawing out that, yes, it's part of regular audits, but what are those? I think you can't just take it as read. It's not like an MOT certificate. It's just that's the certificate that you've been handed. The procurement has to be driven. There's no stop go. If you don't have somebody competent to do your doors that's a third party certified installer, they don't stop the project. They just carry on working. So as much as this document's great in that we're only reviewing it for the text, I'm just concerned that if someone reads it, they just think, well, we've ticked all the boxes, and before you know it, there's a problem getting pushed down the river again.
No, yeah. So the logic of the way that the methodology is that you do this inspection, and I think the principle actually is that the person that's doing the inspection shouldn't be the installer. Yeah.
Right.
Maybe I've misread that, but I think that's the point. It's the inspection that needs to follow a certain documented process, a checklist, for want of a better term.
George, just on that, I find that quite interesting. Not from a point of view of, like, I understand the conflict of interest between, like, you know, an installer then inspecting their own work. But if we think about, like, you know, the importance of the golden thread, so the information that particularly around fire doors that would feed back into the golden thread and so on. If you've got, let's just say, for example, an organisation goes out to procure for a fire door installation contract or a project, and that's, let's just say, 1,000 doors. They install those 1,000 doors under a third-party accredited scheme, and they're all signed off, you know, according to that scheme. Something that we've been successful in winning through tender is fire door servicing contracts, whereby, depending on the location, type of door, we will have routine service inspections that are carried out to those doors under the same scheme. But it means that the installer, i.e. us in this case, is also the service engineer, and then all of that information that's it's like almost like a door servicing pack, for example, is maintained and kept within one place rather than being in several different places, and when called upon, you know, it's not accurate or things are missing. So we've had success in that area in particular, but it's just thinking about what we're saying here, and I know there's different types of inspections across different types of doors that we're talking about, but that for us has been quite a successful contract. Yeah.
So I think having the records in a digital format is important. One of the challenges, though, Danny, is that information needs to be available to the landlord from the systems that they're using. So therefore, because otherwise it's going to be a nightmare. If, for example, you've done the door inspections and you've put it into, maybe there's lots of different systems, isn't there?
Yeah.
That people are using, and some of them have got, QR codes. Some of them have got, connections back to plugs that are into the doors themselves, which is great stuff. But the data itself needs to be accessible to the landlord in a generic way.
So what ends up happening, and we've done a couple of times, so I'll try and sort of just pick a couple of examples. So we've produced a handover pack. At the point of installation, we produce a handover pack which has all of the required information, so certification, installation certificate, so on and so forth. And then it would have the servicing, so a servicing document, which allowed room for servicing, but can be extended over a period of time. And we provide that pack through something, a digital pack, through a smart sheet, for example, which is accessible by the client or by the housing association, or we've also had instances where we have uploaded the information through data sheets, which then integrated into the asset management register.
Yeah.
So we're trying to think of ways in which we can align with the systems that the social landlords and our clients have,
Yes,
to make that recording of information a lot easier. So I think the systems we've worked with are, the Keystone database, for example, so asset register.
that's
just
good.
as an example.
Okay, so I agree with you. So the point is, obviously, what I'm trying to do here, I'm not the expert in this area. You're actually your firm's actually doing it. So I'm conscious of that. But from a practical point of view, I think the process here is to have somebody. I mean, I was talking with the council last week, and they've replaced. They're replacing 3,500 fire doors at the moment, and they've done some spot checks, and they've found that only 20% of the new fire doors that are being installed are up to quality, even though the company that's installed them is accredited.
Yeah, and that's a common issue. Obviously, I don't want to make that sound like a sweeping statement, but we all know, what that means. But something, and this is another thing that I think is really important, because a bulk of our business is with housing associations and local authorities. We understand the importance of that, and also the importance of the budget constraints and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we developed a passport. So it's a fire-door passport. It has pics of the install, and it's we can do things like scan the QR code. We upload pictures of the door at various stages of the install to evidence the correct methods have been carried out. There's calibrated measuring tools that are recorded in the photos, so that people can see, or the clients can see, the actual measurements that we're talking about, and not just rely on trying to judge that from a photo. And then what that allows them to do is carry out a desktop quality assurance process for their own satisfaction. And we found that quite successful as well. So that coupled with
that methodology, that methodology could be a standardized process, could it?
Yeah, 100%.
So is that what we ought to be saying here, that there's different stages that we should be tracking through that process?
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I've always likened it to an active fire safety system. So if you talk about alarms, for example, and the amount of certification there is in installations and servicing and commissioning of fire alarms, that's something that's tested weekly, that's then tested again, in accordance with the organisation's policy, and then serviced once a year, perhaps. And you look at the likes of, it may never be used in the event of a fire. But if you look at a fire door, I use the example of an entrance lobby to a block of flats. Every person that's visiting or delivering something that lives in that property has to walk through that very door and open it and close it. It's used on a daily basis, probably on an hourly basis, and we don't have a servicing regime for it. So that's why we kind of try and carry out from start to finish. So from the install, we carry out the passport, and we make sure the passport pack's complete. We include that in the handover pack, and the client's then able to carry out their desktop exercise. But the passport itself can be an industry standard.
Yes. Okay. So is that something, could you, I mean, if you're interested in sharing that, or maybe, I think what we need to do is probably crack through this, not now, but then pick up on what you're saying there, and anything I mean, the benefit from your point of view, Danny, is that you've already got these processes in place, and therefore, if we as a organization, if we can get people to agree that that methodology works, that presumably is going to be beneficial from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, yes, but we're quite happy to look at something like that. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, recognizing I sort of suggested that we try and get together again at midday. Would you be willing, Danny, to go through this, and or your company to go through it if it's not you that does it, and decide whether there's anything you want modifying? So, for example, this potentially, could this be part of your passport?
Yes, all of that would potentially form part of that passport. It would be included in some way or another. I'll double check. I'll go through the document again. I have had a read of it. Only up to the pages that we're talking about today. So beyond that, I haven't looked at it. But yes, certainly.
What we can do is we can do a bit of a gap analysis on what the passport already contains and what's in the document, and see what could be added to the passport to make it even more robust.
That'd be fantastic.
So
George, I think
that's Jamie, by the way. Jamie, we're having to come through on one computer because we've had a technical issue.
Sharon.
George, I think when we were talking about the document, the first page and the first paragraph of the second page is the actual text. The rest of it is a checklist. So, like the passport that Danny's talking or Jamie's talking about, the bolster that I'd shown you, for the audit trail. After that, so they're page 14 onwards. I think that's more of the checklist. So
yes,
I've taken the first page and that first paragraph there and read that, because after that, I think, I don't need to get involved in it. But as I say, I think the concerns are more about this is another person creating another document about doors. So I think the language needs to be across the board. And obviously it's great that BIM4 are doing it, but we need to make sure whatever text we've got here and recommendations, and as Danny's saying about the passports and that audit trail, the perception of the audits, the installations, the procurement, all these things. I think if BIM if your organisation in Binford Housing can take that message, and no matter what documents you're involved in, I think I would rather that we were more centred on the text at the top, because I think that's the bit that can be misleading for certain people who are, you know, you're talking about people who aren't into doors, who aren't, like the doors, as Danny said, are something that people walk through. They don't understand the importance of that as part of the building fabric, as part of the compartmentation, and they don't understand that as part of their maintenance regime. So it's
Yes.
like, you know, it's like introducing the hard hats. It's a new understanding for people who are building users. So I think our priority should really be the text and the instruction manual, not the audit and the checklist below.
Okay, so I think what you're saying here is that this, just to understand, Sharon, are you saying here that the first sort of 2 pages up till page 13, that's probably relevant to any of the asset types?
Yes, I think the concern is making sure that people understand what you want to have, what you can get, what you are getting, and the problems, and that can be related to any asset.
Cool. Okay, I think that's a great takeaway, actually. So have you got any other, if you've got any other comments that you could add to that? Have we covered them, or is there anything else that we need to do with this, Sharon?
The only other thing I mentioned was the fact that it's very limited to the BRE statements, like the LPS 1197. So I just wondered if it was going to be more generic as a document, or whether they were just going to quote the Red Book. See the third last line there, LPS 1197. Yeah. So if they're saying obviously such as, but obviously there's other schemes. So if it's going to be a slightly more generic document, is it going to take another guidance?
No, cool.
Thank you.
Brilliant, Sharon. Right, I'm gonna. I think we now close this and go back to the main meeting, if that's okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Cheers.